Hello everybody and welcome back to another not applicable Formula 1 video. I hope that you're well. I hope you're enjoying the break that we've got from Formula 1 before Russia. 8 races to go and my goodness me, the championship is hotting up. But I want to take this opportunity to deviate away from the top 2 teams and look at the team who is currently 3rd in the Drivers' Championship. Daniel Ricciardo has finally won a race for McLaren, my team, the team that I have been following since I started watching F1. And it was so good to see them back at that top step. Daniel Ricciardo has just written his name amongst the greats. Hunt, Lauda, Prost, Senna, Hamilton, Button. Just to name a few of the 19 drivers that have won races with McLaren. 12 World Drivers' Championships in there. 8 Constructors' Championships along the way too. He's done an exceptional job. But it hasn't all been rosy for McLaren over the last few years. So I want to delve into this McLaren team, the McLaren teams that have come before them, the ups and downs we've had over the last 10 years, mainly downs, let's be honest with you, and whether or not this team is ready to jump back up to the top of the podium, to jump back up to the top of the Constructors' Championship, and possibly if either of these two drivers could push for a World Drivers' Championship next year. But before we delve into that, we have to go back to the last time that McLaren actually won a race, which was in 2012. Jenson Button was the man standing on top of the podium in Brazil in 2012. And little did they know that between this win and 2021, there would only be 8 podium position finishes. 8 podium position finishes for McLaren. No wins. And 3 of those podium position finishes have been Lando Norris this season. So there'd actually only be 5 podium position finishes between this last win and the win that we have seen a couple of weekends ago. It was absolutely insane to think that, because at this point here, Button was standing on the top of the podium for the 3rd time that season. He'd won 3 races. Hamilton had won 4 races that season. Between them, 7 wins over the course of the 2012 season. And they'd done exceptionally well. They were 3rd in the Constructors' Championships. And not only that, they were looking pretty quick. They'd won the last 2 races of that season. It looked like they were going to use that as a bit of a springboard for 2013 to change things around, push themselves forward, and become a team that was battling for Constructors' Championships and possibly pushing Lewis Hamilton to his 2nd World Drivers' Championship with McLaren. But it didn't quite go that way. And McLaren sort of lost quite an important part of that puzzle when Lewis Hamilton decided to make that move to Mercedes. In hindsight, what an incredible move. He has been part of a dynasty in Formula 1 that will be forever remembered for its dominance over the last few years. But at the time, this decision was questioned. He was filling in a seat that Michael Schumacher had just left. Mercedes was sort of a midfieldy team coming through the ranks, and Nico Rosberg was again a young driver, a little bit unproven when it came to right at the top of the field. And it was a difficult time for McLaren because they'd lost Mr. McLaren. You know, he was the driver that had won them a world title. He'd done exceptionally well at McLaren, and he decided he needed a new challenge. McLaren also took a new challenge though. In 2013, they looked at the RB8B and they saw how well Red Bull were doing over the last few seasons, Vettel winning championship after championship, and decided to try and take a little bit of a leaf out of their book. They redesigned their car and went for a completely different direction. They brought in Sergio Perez, and it just didn't quite work out for them. It was a little bit of a flop overall. Their highest finish that season was 4th, again in Brazil. So obviously the Brazilian track they just absolutely love at this point. Button had fairly consistent finishes in the top 10, but Sergio Perez, when he came into the team, was very, very disappointing indeed. You can say a similar sort of thing for 2014. Magnussen came in for Perez, and Magnussen wasn't too bad, but again, the team could only finish 5th in the Constructors' Championship, 1 podium for each driver over the course of the season. And actually, it was both of them got their podium in the opening race of the season in Australia. They struggled with that new design. I think they struggled with the lack of a talismanic figure in Lewis Hamilton for a couple of years. They didn't quite know how to replace him. Perez wasn't quite good enough. Magnussen wasn't quite good enough. And It probably didn't help that at this point Hamilton started battling for world titles and, of course, winning the World Drivers' Championship in 2014 as well. So 2015, they completely ripped up the rulebook and started again. This is probably the darkest 3 years that we've had as McLaren fans. They decided to opt for a new engine provider, and they went, of course, for Honda. And my goodness me, Alonso came into the team, which was an absolute dream for McLaren. They finally had this talismanic figure, a little bit like Lewis Hamilton, someone who'd won drivers' championships before, someone who came into the team, and we've seen Alonso, even now this season, is absolutely phenomenal. Back in 2015, he was a wonderful driver. He was coming off the back of a few disappointing seasons with Ferrari, a new challenge for him, and I was really excited to see Alonso come along. But the whole thing just did not work, unfortunately. The Honda engine was absolutely dogged. It just lacked any sort of power, any sort of efficiency, and it had a massive reliability issues. It broke down pretty much every single race. In 2015, there was 12 retirements between Alonso and Button over the course of the season. In the Constructors' Championship, they only managed to finish in 9th place, and they accumulated 105 grid place penalty in Spa. That's right, they got a 105 grid place penalty in Spa. A 50 place grid penalty for one driver, a 55 place grid penalty for another driver, a 105 place grid penalty. Absolutely disastrous scenes. 2016 didn't go too much better either. It was a little bit better. Alonso sort of dragged that car out of nowhere to a few good positions, and they managed to achieve a 6th in the Constructors' Championship, but 2017 was just another disaster waiting to happen. Stoffel Van Dorn came in for Jenson Button. Jenson Button was moved on, but testing, they only got the fewest laps of every single team in. The car basically broke down every single other corner. They were back down to 9th in the Constructors' Championship. In Bahrain, they saw 5 engine changes across 2 cars. Over the course of the Bahrain weekend, there was 5 engine changes. The Honda McLaren, as a team, as a manufacturer, and engine partner, was absolutely abysmal. Something needed to change. And to be fair, it seems a little bit harsh to blame Honda. They were just sort of the rotten cherry on top of the ice cream that was awful in McLaren at that time. The team was fractious, it was clueless, it was panicked. They panicked every single time something went wrong. The team had no real direction to it at this point, and McLaren were looking pretty much dead and buried. They ended up losing Vodafone as a sponsor in 2013 along the way in this sort of terrible spiral into nothingness, and it was looking very, very bad indeed. So they decided to, again, completely change what they were all about. They decided to go for Renault as their engine manufacturer from 2018 to 2020 and just completely redesign the car once again. Just forget about the Honda 3 years, start all over. And the first year under Renault, again, it was sort of difficult. Getting used to a new engine manufacturer is never super easy. And it was only back to 6th in the Constructors' Championship. But again, moving forward from that 9th place finish the year before. And in 2019, this is when the seeds of hope started to be seen. Fernando Alonso had had enough. And to be honest with you, I can't blame him. Would you have stayed around at McLaren when they were just absolutely falling apart? Probably not. So Alonso moves on and decides to find another team and disappear into the wilderness for a couple of years. Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz come in fresh, energetic, hungry. And I loved the dynamic partnership that they had at McLaren. They were wonderful for the 2019 and 2020 seasons that they had together. Lando Norris, obviously, in 2019, coming in as a rookie, always has those little difficulties that you have with any rookie driver coming into the sport. But Carlos got in and amongst that top 10 and in and amongst the top 5 quite often, even with a podium in Brazil. It was looking like the tiny little seeds of something special had started to be planted. Then in 2020, Carlos and Lando continued their excellent form together. They managed to get continual podiums along the way. And of course, Carlos Sainz managed to get that 2nd place in Italy. Lando, again, second season, still had those little, errors in him that rookies have, but Carlos Sainz was looking absolutely sensational. Then we obviously lose Carlos Sainz to Ferrari. It's determined fairly early on in the season that he is going to be moving over to Ferrari. And at that point, to be fair, Lando Norris was having another incredible start to a season. He started last season actually much better than Carlos Sainz. It was only towards the end of the season that Carlos Sainz actually overtook Lando Norris in the Drivers' Championship. So the team was sort of broken apart. Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz, as well as they worked together, it wasn't going to last forever. So we had to bring in someone who was proven, someone who was going to win races for us, and someone who was going to be continually up and amongst it. And there was no better driver, in my opinion, on the grid than Daniel Ricciardo for that. He's won races. He's shown that he is good enough to be in Formula One consistently. And coming into a team that was coming into a 2021 season, again, with a new engine manufacturer in Mercedes, was a bit of a risk for Daniel Ricciardo. And, towards the beginning of the season, it has been tough for him. Lando Norris with 4 podiums so far this season and battling for an absolutely obscene 3rd place in the Drivers' Championship. Still only 9 points off Bottas, which is disgusting at this point in the season. If Lando Norris finishes 3rd in this Drivers' Championship, he deserves, I don't even know, a championship of his own just for finishing 3rd place, because that would be absolutely insane from him. But Ricciardo, a proven race winner, someone coming into the team that they can build around, has shown little flashes since the summer break in particular, and has shown, he is the driver we all remember. He will come on, he will win races, and he showed that in Monza. He finally got that win, and I really think that is going to kickstart him and McLaren and starting to move forward. But I think the main thing is the progression McLaren have had over the last few years. In terms of the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships, they're looking so much better than they have ever before. In the last 5 seasons, they had 30 points, 60 points, 145, 202, and 215 already this season, with 8 races to go. Finally, we are looking like we are moving forward at McLaren. There are positives to look at and negatives to look at. So finally, do I think that McLaren can battle for a title in 2022? Well, the positives at this moment in time is both drivers have shown they've got what it takes when it comes to the front of the grid. Lando Norris can pick up podiums consistently, and Daniel Ricciardo we've seen can win races, and now we've seen again he can win races in this McLaren, a McLaren that he doesn't feel 100% comfortable in. Lando and Dan have brought so many rejuvenated eyes to this McLaren team as well. Feels like so many more people care about McLaren now than they did 5 years ago. And maybe that's just because I've started doing this YouTube thing, but it seems like there's a lot more positivity around McLaren, and a lot more people are talking about McLaren in more of a positive light than, the Honda era, where they were basically a bit of a joke of a team. And then finally, now they're starting to win races. Now Lando is being continual on that podium, and I think Lando is probably going to win a race before the end of the season. He could maybe see himself as a little bit unlucky to not have a win and to not be that first McLaren driver to get a win for the team in that such a long period between 2012 and now. But then come the negatives. 2022, they're finding form and they're starting to move forward at just the wrong time, in my opinion, because 2022 is going to be a complete mix-up. The grid is going to completely change, and the cars are going to completely change. It's a massive regulation change coming up, and you don't really want to carry form like you have into something where you possibly aren't quite prepared. I say that because McLaren spent all of their upgrade tokens, both of their upgrade tokens this year, on inserting that Mercedes power unit. And, it's been a good choice. That Mercedes power unit has done them very, very well this year. But both of their tokens went on that this year. Which means they don't have any left over to do anything else with the car in terms of their upgrade tokens. They spent a lot of time this season battling for 3rd. They have brought upgrades throughout the season. I think you've seen the McLaren car get a little bit better every single race. And you can tell that they have been working on the car, which maybe means that they haven't been focusing on the 2022 car too much. And also, McLaren have built new facilities that aren't ready until 2023. So for me, I think they've just hit form and they've hit the perfect driver lineup with Lando Norris coming through and Daniel Ricciardo finding a new form and being more comfortable in the car next year. I think it's just at the wrong time. And I think 2022 is going to be so difficult for them. And personally, I think they're going to end up probably around third in the Constructors' Championship again. But 2023, when their new facilities open, when Daniel Ricciardo's had another year in the team, Lando Norris is going to be coming into, well, if this year isn't his prime in a couple of years' time. And we're going to see what I think will be a resurgence from McLaren in a couple of years. I'd love to know your thoughts on everything that I said down below. Do you think McLaren can win a Constructors' Championship? And out of these two, who do you think would win a Drivers' Championship? If the car was there next year, these two are battling for the title. Who do you think will come out on top? Let me know in the comments down below. Please leave a like if you'd enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you are new to the channel. And I will see you next time. Wrong button.